All right, so thank you everybody for being here this afternoon. This is really a timely topic for us. We specifically asked Gary to be one of the presenters for this conference because of the timing and how important we all think this issue is. I'm going to do a quick little introduction here, and then I'm going to take it, send it off to Gary. Gary is the coordinator of the Iowa State Data Center, which is a federal state cooperative program with the U.S. Census Bureau. The State Data Center is a division of the State Library of Iowa. Gary's been with the State Data Center since 2001, and he works with the Census Bureau and its data extensively and is widely quoted in the media. A native Iowan who grew up near Cedar Rapids, Gary is also the coordinator of the Federal State Cooperative Program for Population Estimates and the Federal State Cooperative Program for Population Projections. And I'm sure he's going to talk a little bit about the projections today. And he is also the governor's liaison to the U.S. Census Bureau for the state of Iowa. So thank you, Gary, for being here. And we can't wait to hear what you've got to tell us today.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me. Yeah, as mentioned, my name's Gary Krob. I am the coordinator for the State Data Center program. I run a bunch of different things, but that's primarily, that's the easiest way to think of me. And really, before we get into the decennial census, which is what we're here for, I just wanted to give a little background information of what the State Data Center program is. It was established in the mid-'70s as a federal state cooperative program that would allow the federal government not to have to field a million questions a day from people who lived in Iowa or Illinois or Nebraska. So they set up partnerships in all 50 states, the island areas, in Puerto Rico, really as subject matter experts. People people in the state can turn to, or you don't have to be in the state, but if you're looking for information about Iowa, this is a contact that you can go to get some of that information. And so, in my role along those lines, I deal primarily with census data, but it is not the sole breadth of what we have on the State Data Center website, but also just in the information that I have available to me, that I am available to you as a tool, as a resource. And part of that also is to be an advocate for ways to improve census data in our state, collected by the federal government, but also just how the data is used in the state of Iowa to the best of our ability. And so when we start talking about data, it's more than just how many people live in a specific area, and that's extremely important, and that's primarily what we're going to be dealing with as far as the 2020 census goes. But there are a lot of other data elements out there that the Census Bureau collects that is vitally important, and the data really tells kind of, as a librarian, as a story, if you will, about your community, about your county, about your state. And it's more than just the number of people. This is just a few of the questions that can be answered by census data, and really to enrich community planning processes, to help with grant programs and stuff like that. There's a wide array of data that is out there that can help with all those different projects. So data sources, I just throw this up real quick just to kind of give you an idea of what's out there, what I deal with primarily, but this is not by any stretch of the imagination the only types of data that's out there. As I mentioned, I primarily work with the U.S. Census Bureau data. So that includes censuses, surveys, and estimates, and to a lesser extent, projections. The census is a decennial census. We're going to talk about that, as I mentioned. But then there's a wide variety of surveys that they conduct on a monthly and annual basis, even when the decennial census isn't going on. So there's a lot of data that's constantly coming out from the Census Bureau. In fact, most of the data isn't coming from the decennial. It comes from a few different surveys, primarily the American Community Survey. Estimates are actually annual estimate releases that the Census Bureau releases each year that look at the population for the nation, state, county, and cities. So we get annual population estimates for all 945 cities in Iowa on an annual, every year. And then there's characteristic data for the state and for the counties that's also released each year that looks at age, sex, race, and Hispanic origin. Currently, we are in the 2019 release cycle for the estimates. So I just posted on the website county level population estimates. The city estimates should come out, all things being equal, and obviously nowadays things aren't equal anymore, but I would still expect to see The city population estimates come out in June, so you should have a good number for your community sometime mid-June. Also in June is when we would get the age, sex, race, and Hispanic origin estimates for the state and for the counties. I know that's not necessarily as helpful for you, but if you're still looking to get an idea of what's going on in the community around you, the county age, sex, race, and Hispanic origin is a good way to look at, good thing to look at. I also have some data from the Office of Immigration Statistics that um, looks at naturalization and I'm missing one. Immigration, naturalization, maybe those are the only two data set points. Anyway, it's not a lot, but and it's only on the state level, but it looks at flows from other countries into the state of Iowa, and that's released annually. I have some bankruptcy data that's a county level data source. I don't know how much use that is, but that is available, as well as some state agency data from the Iowa Department of Education, Iowa Department of Human Services, and the Iowa Department of Public Health. That last one is data, private data providers, is we purchase a subscription each year at the State Library from Woods and Pool Economics that provide population projections for counties out to 2050. This comes out every year, and this profile for your county will project out the population by age, sex, race, and Hispanic origin, those big four they keep saying over and over again, as well as some economic and social characteristics. Race, I already mentioned race, there's another one I'm missing. But anyway, it comes out every year, the newest release, and like I said, it goes out to 2050, and it shows every year from 1969 out to 2050. So if you wanted to see what the projections for your county would be in, say, 2024, and that would be something we could look at. We could look at what the population is projected to be. And since it's released each year, that Woods and Pool, they do look at how the census and the surveys that they produce can affect those population projections. So it's pretty timely. It's a good source for you if you need it. But what we're really here for, and what the primary focus of this presentation is to talk about the 2020 census. When I agreed to do this presentation, I wasn't sure how much I wanted to say about this, because at this point, normally we would be well into the 2020 cycle. A lot of the different processes, programs that go on as part of the 2020 would have either they'd be going on right now or they had already happened, and so I wasn't sure how much use this would be. Little did I know we'd have a pandemic, and everything gets delayed by quite a bit. So a lot of this information is extremely timely, because while the census has kicked off, and most of you, if not all of you, should have received a postcard in the mail. You know, the stage that the Census Bureau is at on June or April, what are we at? April 5th right now? I don't know. Anyway, they'd be much farther down the road than they are right now. They've had to delay a lot of different programs. And so there's a lot of things that I think will be important for you to understand and to know, and then to be able to share with people you come in contact with. So on a higher note, what is a census? It's a legislatively mandated count of the population of everyone residing in the United States, in all 50 states, including the island areas. It is required by the U.S. Constitution. It's Article 1, Section 2. I like to point out Article 1, Section 2. Article 1, Section 1, the very first article of the Constitution, is what established Congress, the House of Representatives and the Senate. And then the very next thing that they decided they needed to do in this Constitution was define how we were going to figure out the representation for the Congress. So the census was the second thing that they deemed necessary when establishing this government, this new fledgling government at the time. So they knew then it was going to be very important, and over time it is the importance for the census has grown as our nation has grown. And so as I mentioned, it is actually federally mandated by law. I don't remember the penalty, what it is if you don't fill out the census, but I have never, and I've been doing this for a long time now, ever heard of actually anyone getting the penalty, but technically it is in the law that you're supposed to fill it out. I think it's more of like a carrot versus a stick. The government decided they needed the stick to ensure that people would respond to the census. But what do they use that data for? Well, there's two big things that I like to talk about with the decennial census. First is what I mentioned just briefly a second ago, and that's representation. That population count is used to draw our congressional districts, both on the federal level, In 2010, we actually lost a seat. We went from 5 congressional districts down to 4. Even though our population had grown and continues to grow, other states grow at a faster rate than we do, and so we lost a seat. We're not projected to lose a seat for 2020. All things staying the way they should, so we should be fine there. So it's to draw those congressional districts, but also the state legislative districts. So your state representatives, both Senate and House of Representatives, those district lines are drawn based on this decennial count, as well as school district boundaries, voting district boundaries, and a wide array of other statistical boundaries in the state of Iowa. Actually, we kind of use those population data and the number of public libraries to draw our library districts. When we were figuring that out, we used the population data to make sure that each district was relatively equal in size, and that's really how they use the population in a lot of different district processes, redistricting processes. The other really important part of the decennial census is funding. There is a lot of federal funding, there is a lot of state funding that is tied into that population count. In fact, it was determined, this was a study done by George Washington University, that in fiscal year 2016, Iowa received $8.7 billion that year in federal funding. And that money was then doled out across our state based on that population, those populations numbers. Not everyone got all that funding, and some of it, if it's like Medicaid, Medicare, not everyone's on that, but that we needed to know the population in order to determine what percentage of the funds we should be allowed to, not be allowed, that we would be receiving. It equates to, if you look at it, approximately about $1,800 per person per year is what we get from the decennial census. I like to I do simple math, so you'll have to bear with me. Average household size in Iowa is about 2.3, so I just take it down to 2, just make math easy. So we're looking at about $3,400 a year, $3,600 a year that comes into your community for this house. Well, if you miss that house, you've missed $3,600 for that year. But the thing is, in the state of Iowa, we freeze the population at that decennial count, and so that's the population that carries through for your community for the next 10 years. So it's actually $36,000 that your community has lost because that house did not get counted. And the thing is, the house is still there. They're coming to your libraries. They're going to the parks. If they have kids, they're going to the schools. And so the resources, the federal funding that's available, that's we're supposed to be giving to the areas that need it, and how we're supposed to figure that out, that population number is skewed. And so if we miss that house, you're missing funding that could help you do your job, or your city do their job, or your school district do their job. So it's really important that with this decennial count, that we get everyone counted once, only once, and in the right place. Aside from the federal budget, there's also state budget. There's a lot of funding the state agencies use, and the population will be a denominator in a lot of cases. I get calls from different agencies wanting to know the population for specific, all the counties, all the cities, et cetera, because they need to figure out how to allocate state funding as well. So it's not just the federal funding that relies on this once every 10-year count. This is just I'm sure you can't read it very well, but I like to show the source for that $8.7 billion in fiscal year 2016. So this was accounting for dollars survey that they did, and they looked at the 55 large federal spending programs. So this is what, I mean, when we say 8.7, that still is just kind of a guesstimate, because this is only looking at the largest funders. Actually, in here is probably the LSTA grant should probably be in there. I'm not sure if it is, but if it's not, I mean, that's all funding that's directly impacted to libraries in our state, and that is based again on population. So timeline. So this is where things would have been interesting, where I would have said, yeah, most of this stuff is done. We would be basically waiting for that May 13th. We'd be just, everything above that would have been done. And a lot of this has been, but not everything. In essence, the census day was April 1st, 2020, so just last week, but they started sending out postcards in mid-March, and that's that March 12th date. And that's when you could have started to respond to the census. It's, even though Census Day is based on April 1st, you would have had some time I mean, you can do it well before and you can do it well after to fill out the form. And so they just want to make sure that everyone gets every opportunity to fill this out. The postcards most people who got postcards, and we'll talk a little bit more about the postcards here in a second. There are different stages. Actually, a lot of you, and I know I did, I've already filled out my census, but I still get postcards saying, hey, we haven't heard from you, haven't heard from you. They have a pretty set procedure on how they're doing this, where they're going to be sending out constant reminders until their system gets caught up to where uh, their mailings are. At some point, you know, the contact points will stop as long as you have filled out your census. So this is a postcard option. This is this is the main way that they would like you to respond to the census this decade. This is actually the first decennial census to offer an online option. They have been doing online response for the American Community Survey since about 2014. So they had kind of worked through a lot of the bugs, and they felt pretty comfortable, and they did a lot of testing on this. So everyone should have got it. Most people would have got a postcard. They've determined areas that would not be getting a postcard right away, where they would actually be leaving forms on that first initial visit, either in the mail or dropping it off at the place of residence. They looked at a couple different factors to determine where those areas are. Internet connectivity was a big one, obviously. You know, if they could look at particular areas in our state and in other states and make a determination whether this area had the capacity to respond online. And if they determined they wouldn't, then they would automatically get a form. Another option would be non-traditional city-style addresses. If they didn't have a way to get you the postcard, they would then go send people out to kind of drop those forms off. So not everyone got a postcard, but primarily most people in the state, most people in the country did get postcards with a little code saying, hey, go to this website, put in the code and fill it out. I took it. I've done it. It took all of actually 5 minutes tops for me to do it. It was pretty simple. Worked really well. I will point out a couple things. One, you actually do not need that census ID number to fill out the census. So even though they ask for it, there's a link at the bottom that says, I don't have my code. If you click on that, you put in your house address and then you're good to go. They'll just match it with the code that they have. This actually came up. I had a snowbird in Arizona. They'd been getting the postcards down in Arizona, but they wanted to actually make sure that they filled out the information for Iowa. Well, they didn't have the Iowa code, and so they were worried that they wouldn't get to it in time. I walked them through and told them that it is possible for you to do it without having the code. The online questionnaire, very similar to a SurveyMonkey. I'm trying to think what is that stupid thing called? SurveyMonkey. Very similar to that, fill in the blank, click next kind of stuff. It's actually available in 13 languages aside from English. Those languages are listed there. If the respondents have questions about the online form, they can contact what's called a questionnaire assistance center, and they have support in those 13 languages. And actually the number that you would call, let's say you were Korean, there'd be a number next to the word Korean, and you could type in that number. The minute that person answers the phone, they're speaking Korean. So there's not going to be any kind of teleprompt where you press 1 for Korean, press 2 for Italian, that kind of thing. It goes immediately to the person who can speak the language of the respondent. Aside from these 13 languages, the form and then assistance is provided actually for the decennial census in over 34 languages, I believe. So these are not all the languages. The 13 are obviously, there's a Census Bureau, they have the data. This is the most widely spoken languages in the United States, and so that's how these were chosen.
Gary, we have a couple of questions. I'm going to interrupt here quick. So question about paper forms. Mm-hmm. Paper forms are only going to be provided by the census workers then? I mean, if you got the postcard and you can't do it online, is there any option for a paper form? Yeah, so you'll get the postcard and you don't want to do it or you can't do it, and they'll send you another postcard. Then they'll send you another postcard. And either by the 4th, I can't remember if there's 6 contact points or 5, but like maybe by the 4th contact point, they're just going to mail you a form. And then if you don't fill it out again, I think then they knock on your door to get you to fill it out. So everyone will get a form, but you can also, I believe on that postcard, there should be a number you can call and request a form to be mailed to you. The online option really
was the federal government, the Census Bureau's way to save money. If they can get a lot of people to fill it out online, they can cut the cost of the census drastically. Each decade, the census gets more and more expensive, and this could be a way to actually reverse that trend if they can get a large majority of the population to respond online.
Good, that answered that really completely. Thank you. And then
Mhm.
this is an interesting one. Rachel said, I received a postcard for the library. I don't need to fill that out if I got one at home, right?
Yeah, I don't know why the library would have got one unless they, in part of I didn't talk about it, but one of the early processes was called address canvassing, where they would go around and identify houses and make sure that all the residences that they have in their address list match what they're seeing on the ground. Somehow my guess is the library could have gotten into the address file as a residence versus as a business, because the business wouldn't fill out the decennial census. That's my guess, is it's just an accident on that, an error in their address list.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. The next thing we're going to talk about is group quarters. This is important to a lot of us right now because things are crazy. The way the census would have conducted and will conduct group quarters enumeration hasn't changed. They've delayed how they're going to do it just because things, again, are crazy, and they need to make sure everything's in place. But when I talk about group quarters, we're looking at nursing homes, college dorms, military bases, and prisons. Those are the big ones. Nursing homes, the nursing homes were contacted earlier this year to say, hey, it's coming. Would you like to respond? They contacted the administrators, the administrators. Would you like to input all your clients' information online? Would you like us to come and visit you, et cetera? The institution would have made a decision, and then that's what would have happened. Everything got pushed back about at least a month now, so that I know I've had contacts from a few nursing homes that said, well, they were supposed to come around April 1st. I haven't heard anything. Last I heard, they're not going to be doing anything until the end of April for nursing facilities. The other big one, prisons are fine. I mean, they've already contacted the prisons and they get the data directly from the prisons. Dormitories is going to be an issue, not because of the procedure. The procedure is fine. It's just, I think people are going to be very confused. College students are counted where they go to college, where they school, because you're counted where you spend a majority of your time. And unfortunately, and I have 4 kids, 2 of them are in college right now. As much as I would like to say that those 2 in college, live at home with me, they don't. Most of the time they're at, I mean, right now they do, but normally they would be at in Cedar Rapids and they would be in Ames. So the Census Bureau contacts the registrar's office and gets all of the information that they need for all of the people living on campus that way. And then parents are told, do not count your kids on your census, because we don't want to double count the population. We want to count them where they should have been and where they are, and which is in like, again, in my kids' case, Ames and Cedar Rapids. Well, these kids are now not in Ames and Cedar Rapids, and so there is going to be confusion by parents when they fill out the form, that they think, well, it says who's living here right now, and not right now I have these kids are living with me. Even when they weren't living with you, the parental instinct was to count them at home. It's going to be even harder now. The Census Bureau is working with the universities to get the messaging out, and universities and colleges, to make sure that the process is still going to go the way it was intended. Again, there's a delay in how the Census Bureau will collect that data, but it will still be collected by the Census Bureau from the colleges. So your kids will get counted. If they lived on campus, they will get counted in the census. The area of concern that I have are college students who do not live on campus and currently I have come back home. The way they would have participated in the census is they would have gotten the postcard for their apartment, and then they would have been responsible for filling it out. Well, if they're not there right now to get that postcard, they're not going to get counted. They need to, and this is part of the spiel that I'm giving to people now when I'm talking. If you know kids with college age, or if you know people with college age students in their home, make sure they understand. Or if you're talking with young kids in general, they understand if they lived off campus in their home for the summer until August, they still need to get online to that My Census 2020, I think is what it is, .gov, and fill it out and make sure that they're counted for residing in the area that they should have been. I think we're going to have a serious issue with that. I don't, I think the counts will probably be fine for the most part, though we do have a lot of, students who don't live in our state that, are back in Illinois, Minnesota, et cetera. We want to make sure that they get counted in Iowa. But, if in my case, let's say if I had known better and if I had put my son who was in Ames, marked him down for Des Moines, he still gets counted in the state of Iowa, but it's going to be the wrong county. It's going to have an negative impact on Story County, and it could have a big negative impact on the city of Ames. So we need to make sure that we do everything possible to ensure that those counts are people are counted in the right spot. That's enough for that soapbox, but just want to make sure I let everyone know that.
One really quick question then. Are mobile home communities considered group quarters since they're owned by the companies who manage them?
No, they would not be considered a mobile home or a group quarter. There are exceptions, but not a mobile home. Like a campground would be considered a group quarter. It wouldn't be necessarily called a group quarter, but they have a different program for how they go around collecting data for like campgrounds. This doesn't affect us, but circuses, zoos, things like that, where there are people who are residing in things that could be mobile and could move around. But a mobile home park, if you will, you still have an address, so you will get a form, or you'll get a postcard or a form, however it's determined.
All right, thank you.
Yep. Not the last one. One of the things I want to touch on is homelessness. They do make sure that they get everyone in the United States, island areas, and Puerto Rico counted, and that includes people who do not have a permanent residence. Now, sometimes these people are, living with other people, and if you're filling your form out right, you would mark them as, if they're residing at your home, you would mark them that you have people living with you, whether they're a boarder or a guest. There's different options you can pick. But this is primarily for people who don't have a usual place of usual residence. People who live in shelters, homeless shelters, or women's abuse shelters, or children's homes, anything like that. Well, not children's homes, that would be a group quarter, but they have a program where they go around and get these people counted, as well as people who don't live in the shelters. And so there was going to be, and there still will be, I just don't know if it's going to be the same day. I believe it was going to be, was it April 30th or was it May 30th? Maybe it was supposed to have already happened. If it was supposed to have already happened, I'm sure it didn't. Where there was a 24-hour period, or 18-hour period. Starting at 10 p.m. one night, they're going to go out and count to all the areas they've been in contact with, all the cities and different organizations, to make sure that they know what areas to go in. And so in large groups, they would be going under bridges and in the different homeless camps, et cetera, getting these population counted and into our census. That is still going to happen. If it was supposed to be the end of March, I got to believe it didn't, because I haven't heard that it did. But it is something that they will be doing. As I just assume, much like everything else, it's going to get pushed back how they do it. So what is on the 2020 census? I've told you, the different ways they're going to do it, but primarily, what is it? What are they asking? Besides population, how many people live in your home, they're going to ask the sex, age, race, Hispanic origin of everyone in that house, as well as the household relationship and tenure. When I say household relationship, what I'm meaning is, if I fill out the form and I say there are 5 people living with me, I have to give the information about those 5 people, and then how those 5 people are related to me, or not related, but just the relationship to me. So if it's my children, I mark them as my children. But if, let's say, I had a nephew staying with me, you can mark down nephew. If you was just a roommate, you can mark roommate. So there's a lot of different options, but it's their relationship to the person filling out the form. That last question is going to be about tenure, and that is, do you own or rent your home? And that is it. You'll see at the bottom, I have citizenship still on this list with a line through it. As I assume most of you are aware, citizenship was going to be asked by the U.S. Census Bureau, or it was proposed that it would be asked. And it was determined that eventually that question would not be on the form. I still keep it on the slide because most of us know about it. We've heard about it, and I think it's important to keep talking about it because people need to understand that yes, while it might have been asked, or you may have heard that it was going to be asked, we need to get the messaging out that it is not. It is not going to be on the census. The only thing they're asking is sex, age, race, Hispanic origin, household relationship, and tenure. Okay, so what we're going to look at here is just a couple different resources, things that you can look at. You know, a lot of this, there's some things here that, you know, as youth librarians, you might have, and some of the kids could be fun or ways for them to get involved, and that's really not, you know, out there for available to us now. And I took a couple things out that just aren't available. But I still think there are some ways that we can participate and we can stay active and engaged in the 2020 census, and I want to talk about those, even though the ways we do it may have changed now. First one is what's called a complete count committee. This is something that was established, or an idea that the Census Bureau had. They can, you know, run all the ads in the world and say, and you probably have been hearing them. I know I do, and I don't even have regular television, and I still hear them. You know, they can say, please fill out the census, please fill out the census. And, you know, I may or may fill it out. I may or may not listen to them. They know that. So they want local people talking, because and I know I can tell you to fill it out, but unless you know me, you may or may not even listen to me. But who you will listen to, you know, are going to be your local leaders, your local, the residents, your neighbors, if you will, you know, if your pastors or your priests, your politicians, your mayor, if that local voice is explaining to you and telling you why the census is important, you're a lot more likely to respond than if I tell you, and definitely a lot more likely to respond than if the Census Bureau tells you to do it. So a complete count committee was a way for the Census Bureau to kind of get that messaging across. And so governments throughout the country, in Iowa and elsewhere, there's been city and county, and in Iowa, actually most states have a statewide complete count committee, a higher level, if you will, complete count committee, that meet on a regular basis to discuss the census, to discuss what's going on, where they're at, and the messaging and how that we want to get across to our local community members, our neighbors. And you know, the Census Bureau likes to call it the trusted voices in your community, which I like. It makes sense, and I think it's the right idea. And as I mentioned, the state has a statewide complete count committee. I'm on it. It's chaired by the lieutenant governor and co-chaired by the secretary of state. We've met a handful of times. You know, right now we're all kind of in a holding pattern. There was going to be a Census Day proclamation signed by the governor a couple weeks ago that, you know, that obviously got changed or canceled. So I don't know how much these complete count committees are currently meeting. So I think I have a slide suggesting later in this that, you know, if you want to participate, you know, contact your highest elected official in your area. You can check to see if you have one, et cetera. That's probably not an option for you anymore, but it is still something that you may have heard about. I would like to have thought that a lot of libraries were at least at the table for some of these local complete count committees, because libraries play a huge and vital role in the 2020 census, especially because of the online component. And now that has also changed. So I don't know, you know, but when we were setting up the idea of the complete count committee, I pressed heavily in the different national conferences I was at that the library organization, the ALA, and then just the libraries in general, be involved in the 2020 census, because if we were going to be asking people to fill it out online, I knew too well that there would be a storm of people coming into the libraries wanting help, needing assistance, and that you were going to have to be there to offer that assistance. And we couldn't do this properly if it was going to be, oh, there you go, and just walk out the door and not give the libraries any guidance on how to do it. So there's a ALA guide on the state data center website, on the state library's website, that gives you some advice. But again, a lot of that stuff just doesn't matter anymore. I don't want to sound defeatist or gloom, you know, all doom and gloom. But, you know, the business, the way we operate is not what's going on right now, and so we have to be, you know, cognizant of that. And so while there are tools and things we could have done to help with this, you know, some of that is not available to us as much anymore. Now I know a lot of libraries are boosting their Wi-Fi signal so people can sit out, you know, in the driveways or in the parking lots and still get internet access, but you can't help them. So if they have any questions about that online form, you know, while you're providing that service, which is great, if you know, if your library is doing that with the Wi-Fi, you know, that's the most you can do right now, because you can't obviously go from car to car, you know, knocking on the windows and making sure they're doing okay, and if they have any questions about anything they're working on. So some of that, you know, isn't available to us right now. I'm sorry, I kind of went off on topic, but I kind of do that when I'm want to make sure we get a point across. But on the complete count committees, like I said, this is what they're made up of, or they can be. It's entirely up to the highest elected official, the person who organized the complete count committee for that area. They get to determine who's on the complete count committee. The Census Bureau, you know, gives suggestions on who they would include, and you'll see a list there of some suggestions that they would have had. But it was really up to each community to set up whoever they wanted to on their committee, to meet however often they wanted to do whatever, you know, whatever marketing, whatever kind of promotion they wanted to do. It was entirely in their hands to get census participation taken care of or done for their community. Statistics in School is a program actually conducted by the Census Bureau I think they've been doing it for a couple decades now. For 2020, they really ramped it up, and all school districts were sent curriculum guide ideas for how to promote not just census data and how data can be used properly, which is what Statistics in Schools is about, but also specifically the 2020 census. There were going to be, and maybe some of the stuff actually got out. I don't know, you know, obviously when that stuff was going to get rolled out. I know it started before the COVID-19 erupted, so there's a chance kids did get some materials about the census, but obviously not at the level that they would have gotten. This website on the Census Bureau's page about statistics in schools has actually a lot of toolkits, a lot of things that are available to teachers, as well as in youth librarians and different organizations on how to engage kids to get their parents to participate, especially in a lot of the minority communities where there may be some distrust in the census. The Census Bureau understood, and rightfully so, that, you know, if they can get the kids to understand why it's important and safe and secure, and then hope that they can then talk to their parents to get them to fill it out, you know, it was an avenue for them to obviously take to get participation up for the 2020 census. It's still something that's out there. I mean, the website's live. There's still tools and links, and last time I looked, I think there was, like I said, like forms and stuff, things people can download and etc. So it's there for you, but obviously I don't know exactly how it would work either, because it's not. I don't know how the libraries are getting, you know, materials out to kids or whatnot. But if there's a way, you might want to take a look at the Statistics in School website, and I'll show you how to get to there in a second. This is the 2020 response rate. This is a live, well, this isn't, this is a screenshot, but there's a live link. I have it on my website where you can click on it and you can see where your state, your county, your city is as far as responding to the 2020 census. It's updated daily. So you can, like, if you want to challenge other communities, if you want to see if you're doing better than, you know, your neighboring community 10 miles down the road, you can look at that. You can say, hey, look at, you know, we have, our response rate is 37 right now, 37%, and you're at 22%, you know. But you can, for Iowa, we can look and see how well Iowa's doing. Currently, I think we're in third. We're behind Minnesota and Wisconsin, I think. Nebraska's ahead of us, and we're ahead of Nebraska, and we kind of go back and forth. But last few days for sure, Minnesota and Wisconsin are slightly above us in response rates. So we need to do a better job. So the governor would really like to be number one in response rates. We were in 2000. In 2010, we dropped down to second or third behind Wisconsin and Minnesota. So kind of following a similar pattern at the moment. I will again show you how this interactive display works here in a shortly, but I just wanted to get you a screenshot. This is a 2020 census page, or part of it at least, on the State Data Center website with a lot of helpful links. I'm just keep looking at my phone to make sure how much time I have. I want to show you a few things here that could be of use or just at least of interest. And again, if you want to, you're not meeting in person with a lot of people, but you can still hopefully get information out. Or if you just happen to talk to somebody online in a Zoom meeting. My kids were doing a Zoom meeting with their cousins, and so and I know that's just something people are doing now a lot in order to maintain a contact when we can't be in contact with everybody. I still want to show you some of these elements, these things that are out there for you to maybe just to spread around if you're given the chance. So what can you do to prepare? And prepare is probably not the right word, because this would have been before, but anyway, you can participate in a complete count committee, which again is probably not something that's available to us right now. But the two things that are available to us, two things that are really important. One is jobs. Census is hiring and has been hiring a lot of people, and because of where we're at now, I know there's people who are out of jobs. This is a good part-time job that the Census Bureau will be in desperate need of local people. That's why they want people in the state of Iowa to do this in-person enumeration when it comes down to it. It'll run from about May to August now, because their things got pushed back. It pays between $18 to $22 an hour. It's part-time work. It's obviously not going to last a year, but in some cases that's not what some people need. They just need jobs now. So it pays well. It works with your schedule, and really what the jobs will be is enumeration, people going around knocking on doors and saying, "Hey, fill out your census. Can I get the information, please?" They'll have little handheld computer devices, and they'll fill it out that way. But it is something that they are desperately in need of. There's a couple other surveys that they're hiring for as well that they're struggling to get filled. I had somebody from the Census Bureau contact me. There's going to be a new survey, I think, in Carroll County, and they just needed to get the information out to the libraries in Carroll County about job opportunities. I said, well, you can send me the information and I can email it to Carroll County libraries, but I said, libraries aren't open right now, so I'm not sure exactly who will see it, but we'll get that information out. So you may see things from the Census Bureau, you'll see things from me over the next couple months about some job opportunities. If you're paying attention to work emails, if you see it and can think of anyone, or if you just want to suggest it to people, please do so, because they're in need for that. Then the other big one is to fight misinformation, disinformation, and scams. There's actually a link on the Census Bureau's website. Whenever they hear of a new scam about the census, they immediately put it on this page, kind of like this a Snopes, if you will, on the Census Bureau's website. There's a lot of misinformation out there, a lot of people trying to use the census in nefarious ways to promote their agendas or to get your personal information. Two vital, important pieces of information for you to relay to anyone you come in contact with. Census Bureau will never, ever, ever ask for your Social Security number. If you get a form from the quote-unquote Census Bureau or a phone call from the Census Bureau asking for your Social Security number, hang up. Let the Census Bureau know, or let the state of Iowa know, whatever. But that is not a question that is ever asked on the decennial census or the American Community Survey. It's just not. They don't need your Social Security number. There's no reason for them to have it. Then the other piece of information that's still going around is that citizenship question that I mentioned earlier. It's not on the census. The census is safe. They're actually not allowed to release information to anyone, not just the public, any federal or state agency or group for 72 years. So any information you fill out for the 2020 census will not be available for your privacy is protected from 72 years from 2020. So what's that, 2092? Genealogists all know that because they get all excited every time there's a new decennial product released that have the names and information. They take it very, very seriously. It's to protect your identity and protect the data that you provide to them. I would argue the data we're providing to them isn't all that all that much. I mean, I don't know if it's protecting my age, sex, race, and Hispanic origin is vital, but it is in the law that they protect it, and they take that very seriously. Okay, so I'm going to go online here a second. I do have a couple screenshots just for you to see. That's the State Data Center website, iowadatacenter.org. And then this is how you can access the data on the Census Bureau's new data site called data.census.gov. There's it was just rolled out last month, 2 months ago. So it works. And they've been working on it for a couple of years. I've been involved in testing on this for a couple of years now, and it works. I don't like it. Most people don't, but it's what we have now. So, but there's some things that don't work as well, or they're still tweaking and they're still working, trying to fix things. But this site is available to you, and when it's up and running the way it's supposed to, it'll probably be very easy for you to find the information that you want. Okay, so here's where I gotta see if I can remember how to do what I need to do. Let's see, where is my share button?
In the center below you there, Gary.
You gotta hover to make it show up.
Oh, do I?
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm not,
if you move
popping.
your
Oh,
mouse
it's up at the top.
Oh no, because you're sharing your slide. Sorry.
Yeah, I was looking at I'm like hovering all over in the bottom.
No.
Nothing's.
Sorry.
The bottom
Okay.
on ours, not on.
Yeah.
There you go.
So this is a State Data Center website. Again, iowadatacenter.org. First thing I'll point out to you that right under news and announcements is the Census 2020 response rate. That's that live interaction. If you click on that, it's going to go to the Census Bureau's website, little page here, and it'll show you currently the national response rate is 44.5. Iowa is running at 50.3, so we're well above the national response rate, but you'll see these states. Why does it say final? That's interesting. They're done already. Minnesota might be done. Oops, we don't want Hawaii. I need to minimize this thing. There we go. We'll select Minnesota. Can't believe they'd be done already. It doesn't make sense. But if we hover over Minnesota, response is 53.9, so it's not that they're done. Okay, so yeah, these blue are higher than us. So actually we're fourth right now because Michigan, wow, Michigan at 51.3. We're at 50.3, Nebraska 50.3. We're ahead of them by 0.1 right at the moment, so that's good news. It's kind of an interesting thing, and the Midwest has always been very high on response rates. We say what you will, you send us a form, we tend to fill it out. And so they usually don't have a hard time getting the participation in the Midwest areas. Now, there are areas within Iowa that have low response rates, and in all the states, and it's our part of the challenge of the complete count committee is to identify those areas and to get those numbers up. But this is just a neat little tool. Like if we select oh yeah, so since I was in Alabama, I select county. So then you can look at the different counties here in Alabama. But let's go to Iowa so we can look at all of 99 counties. Color coded, you can see what counties have done really well. The blue is the better one. So Lyon up there and Sioux have really good. Sioux County has a really good complete count committee, very active. Same thing with Blackhawk County. They had a very active complete count committee as well. But you can just kind of see this areas, how things, how the counties are doing. But if you actually click on city, I've never done the city because I'm not sure how they map the city. Oh, there you go. Okay, so you can then select specific cities just to see how well an area is doing. Just scroll down to. I'm not going to pick on it. I haven't looked at any of these. I just said Carroll, so I'll look at what Carroll. I have no idea how well Carroll's done. That's Celeste, Carroll County, and if we hover over it, they have 54.1% response rate right now. So that's great. Just kind of a fun little thing that you can play around with if you're weird like me. Back to my site, the other thing I want to point out is where the 2020 information is at. You can either click with this Iowa Census 2020, hashtag Iowa Counts. Feel free to do hashtag Iowa Counts on any of your social medias if you're so inclined. You can click on that, or you can click on the folder structure over here that says 2020 Census. And that's going to take you to the 2020 page. A lot of the stuff in here we've already gone over why it's important, and so if you wanted to look back on those numbers about the money and the representation, you can find that information there. Hard to count areas is if you wanted to figure out what parts of your community state, county might be harder to get to respond. There's some tools there that the Census Bureau created that kind of identify those areas where they think could be problematic for, so then you can take a look and see, what's around you that maybe you should go out and talk to. Well, don't go out, but maybe you should try to figure out a way to engage them in participating in the 2020 census. The questionnaire down here at the bottom, in the middle here, that actually has a link to the questionnaire, so you can look at it, what the paper form would look like. There's also a YouTube video done by the U.S. Census Bureau that goes through the online questionnaire. It's like a 25-minute. It does not take 25 minutes to fill out, but the video is a long video because they're very meticulous on explaining every aspect to it. But it's there if you want to look at it. Census jobs, again, as I mentioned, they are hiring. That link will take you to the portal to fill out an application if you're so inclined, or if you know people who do need it. Here's the link for the census in schools. Again, that will take you to the Census Bureau's website. Actually, it might take you to our page, and then nope, it does take you to theirs. I couldn't remember if I put an intermediate page in there. But if you need if you want to look at any of the census and school information, there's the 2020 resources, how to get involved. There's different maps that, if you're, again, I fully acknowledge I'm a bit of a nerd geek. Yeah, I love maps, and so it's fun to look at some of that stuff to kind of figure out, to see data visualized in different ways. So there's some fun things there for kids if they wanted to be more involved or more engaged in the 2020 census. Then there's just a couple other things, but that's a 2020 page if you're ever interested in it. I recommend that you go there. The other thing I just wanted to show is where the data will be once the decennial census has been released. The population counts have to be on the president's desk by December 31st, 2020. I don't believe that. I mean, that's mandated, federally mandated by law, so I don't think that will change. Once they release some of the more detailed data on the age, sex, race, Hispanic origin, that normally would have been coming out and kind of like on a rolling basis, different states at different times, but every state would have had it by the end of March 2021. I don't know if that'll still be the case, depending on how far back this census enumeration process gets pushed back because of the pandemic that we're experiencing. So it's possible it won't be March 2021 that we'll see data, but it still could be around that time. There's going to be two places where you can find the data. The first, down here, I'll just go to their site first, Explore Census Data, U.S. Census Bureau. If you click on that link, that goes to data.census.gov. And then in the search box, I'm looking for population Ely, Iowa. If you type that in, they give you the population, and then there's links to the different tables that are available with that population data in there. Yeah. So once the decennial census is there, that would be the first thing you would see. Right now, you're seeing population data from the 2018 American Community Survey, but as more recent data comes out, this initial box will be updated properly. And then you would click on it, you get the decennial data. So that's one way. On my site, if you click on the data folder here, these are all the different surveys and options that are available to us. To me on my site, and the second box is decennial census, and if you click on that, once that county map goes, you're in the reports section. So this is where currently the three tables I have that include 2020-10 data. I'll have more tables once the 2020 comes out. We switched to a new software after 2010, and so I didn't update a lot of the older tables. But I will be doing that once 2020 rolls out. But if you want to see total population for 1850 to 2010, it'll eventually be 2020. The first thing you would see is a bar chart. You could drop down this filter and say city, and we'll scroll, and we will do Altoona, Iowa. Click on that, and then this is a little bar chart that kind of shows through time how Altoona, Iowa has blown up, if you will. And then there's a tab here that's cross tab. If you're not looking into the visualization, you actually want the hard data, you can then look at this. You can download it into an Excel file down here where it says download. Download it as well, I didn't select anything, but normally you'd be able to download it as a cross tab. So that's an option for you as well. If you want to look at it visually, you can download that as well, but there'll always be two different ways. so and as I mentioned, and then the single year of age, sex, race, and Hispanic origin, that's the big one too. So if you want to look at any race components or ethnicity data, that will be available with 2020 data once it is released on my site in this location. So then I got to new share, go back to this real quick. And besides what I just did, what am I doing? What am I here for? What can I offer to you guys, even though we're all stuck in our homes? Well, the easy one's Facts Online. I showed you the website. I do maintain a website. It's over 200 reports on there with different data elements, data components for Iowa. In a lot of cases, the data is available for the state, county, cities, all cities in Iowa, school districts in Iowa, metropolitan and micropolitan areas in Iowa. There's other geographies that are available that I don't have on my site, but I can get for you if you're interested. And so if you send a request to me, I am available to answer those data requests and make sure you get what you need. I do data mapping. I create profiles for different population groups each year that look at like the status of African Americans in Iowa that was released in January. I just released the status of women in Iowa for Women's History Month in March, working on one for the Asian and Pacific Islander population and then older Iowans that will come out in May. So these are just little profiles, 4-page profiles that look at those communities and how they've changed over time, how they compare to the state as a whole, if you will. And then the last two are conversations between you and me that we look at the data that's out there, because there is a lot of data, and you give me a call and you say, hey, I need working on a grant. I have this number. Is this a good number? Should I use this or not? Or what? I need help. I need this data element. Can you help me with this? And then we talk, and that brings up this most important slide, which is my contact information. My job is to do this. Your job is not. Your job is whatever your job is, and so. I don't want to hear, and I hear it all too often, people spending a week looking for something that I can find in 10 minutes, or I can tell you in under 10 minutes that it doesn't even exist. So, I'm not saying don't look for data. I'm just saying don't kill yourself because you have other things you should be doing. So if you're trying to find something and you're up against a wall, give me a call. Give me an email. You can call too. I prefer email just because it's easier in case I'm not at my phone. Though nowadays, since we can't really go anywhere else, I'm probably at my phone a lot more than I used to be. So that's my contact information, the phone number and the email address to get a hold of me. You can also do census@iowa.gov if you want to get a hold of me that way. And with that, I'm done.
Wonderful, Gary. Thank you so much. I will stop this recording.
Okay.
Oh, wait, no, unless we have some big questions, but I think we're seeing people kind of.
We had one question that I wanted to sort of bring out here, talking about going back to the privacy issue.
Yeah.
The name and location is still kept private, correct? I mean, that's not.
Yeah, for 72 years.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That was a question that we had there as well. So I just want to say thank you to Gary.